The desert was silent, not the silence of peace, but the silence of death. The air shimmered with heat. Waves of fire seemed to rise from the golden sands, making the horizon twist and bend like a cruel mirage. Nothing moved. No birds, no insects, not even the whisper of wind. Only the heavy breath of the desert itself, waiting. And then there was a sound. It was faint at first, a cry, weak, broken, the kind of sound that was not meant to survive in such a place. A small figure stumbled into view, her steps slow and trembling. It was a little alien girl. Her skin was pale, almost glowing against the desert light. Her long silver hair clung to her back, tangled and dirty from the sand. Her eyes shone like fireflies, bright yellow, full of fear, full of desperation. Chains clattered against her thin wrists as she fell to her knees. The metal was heavy, far too heavy for her small body. She tried to pull them, tried to move again, but her strength was almost gone. Every breath shook her chest. Every heartbeat was a battle. She looked around, but there was no one. No voice to answer her cry. No shadow of help on the horizon. She had been left here. Left alone. Why? The desert gave no answer. In the far distance, something shifted. At first it looked like the sand itself was moving. But no, the girl's glowing eyes caught the shapes. Dark forms crawling low against the dunes. Huge, slow, patient. Their movement was unnatural, filled with menace. The monsters of the desert. The girl's breathing quickened. She knew what they were. Everyone on her world knew. They were hunters. They never stopped. Once they caught the scent of weakness, they would follow until the end. Her legs tried to push her forward, but the chains dragged her down again. She fell face first into the sand, her lips touching the burning surface. Her body cried for water, for shade, for anything but this endless heat. But she had nothing. Only the chains. Only the pain. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she wanted it to end. Maybe it was easier that way. Maybe she should stop fighting. Her own people had abandoned her. They had tied her hands, dragged her to this place, and left her here to die. Why should she keep trying? But her eyes opened again, and this time, there was something else inside them. Not just fear, not just weakness, but a spark, a will that refused to go out. She pushed herself up, her small hands sinking into the hot sand. Her breath shook, her body trembled, but she stood. Step by step, dragging the chains behind her, she moved forward. Each step was a scream of pain, but also a scream of defiance. The sky turned darker as the sun sank lower. Long shadows spread across the desert, stretching like claws. The monsters grew closer. Their growls carried on the air, low and hungry. The girl's glowing eyes darted left and right. She was surrounded. Still, she did not stop. The chains rattled. Her hair whipped in the dry wind. Her heart pounded against her chest like a drum of war. Every sound in the desert made her jump: the crunch of sand, the echo of growls, the whisper of movement just beyond her sight. The monsters were everywhere, watching, waiting. The girl fell again, her knees hitting the sand hard. She gasped, the pain forcing tears into her glowing eyes. For the first time, she screamed, a sound full of terror echoing across the empty desert. But no one came. No answer, only silence. She was too small, too weak, too broken. Her head sank low, her silver hair falling across her face. She thought of her people, of the ones who had left her. She thought of their cold eyes, their cruel decision. She was nothing to them, nothing but a sacrifice. Her lips moved in a whisper, too soft for the desert to hear. Please, someone. Her body tilted. She was about to collapse for the last time. But then something changed. In the distance, through the burning horizon, a shape appeared. At first it was nothing but a blur in the heat, a shadow moving against the light of the setting sun. The girl blinked, her weak eyes straining. Was it another monster? Was it death coming for her? No doubt. The figure was tall, broad, moving with purpose, not crawling like the creatures, but walking strong, like he belonged here. A human. The girl's heart skipped. She did not understand. She had never seen one before. Her people spoke of humans, but always in whispers. Some said they were dangerous. Others said they were saviors. But here, in this dying desert, he was the only figure who was not a monster. The girl's chains rattled again as she tried to raise her hand. Her voice was broken, almost gone. But her glowing eyes found him. And in that moment hope sparked again. The monsters growled, closing in. The desert trembled with their weight. The girl fell, her strength almost finished. But she knew one thing: she was no longer alone. The desert night was different from the day. The heat no longer burned her skin, but the cold cut deeper than any blade. The little alien girl shivered as she pulled her arms close to her chest, her chains rattling softly in the silence. Every breath left her lips like smoke, fading into the endless sky above. Stars stretched wide, millions of them, bright and sharp. They looked peaceful, but down here on the ground, there was no peace. She sat in the sand, her glowing eyes darting in every direction. The desert was not empty anymore. The creatures had come closer. Their shapes were hidden by the dunes, their growls rolling like thunder across the night. They were waiting for her to fall. They were waiting for her last bit of strength to leave her body. The girl pressed her small hand against the sand, trying to push herself up again. Her knees shook. Her chains pulled her back. Still, she forced herself to stand. She could not lie down. She could not stop. If she stopped, they would have her. Her silver hair fluttered in the cold wind as she turned her head toward the horizon. The figure was still there. The human. He moved closer now, each step slow but steady, like he feared nothing in this cursed land. His armor caught the starlight. His shadow stretched long across the dunes. The girl's lips parted, as if to call out to him, but no sound came. Her throat was dry, her voice broken. She could only watch as he came closer, and the monsters moved too. The desert was alive with tension. The sand shifted, the growls grew louder, and the girl felt the ground tremble under her bare feet. She saw shapes rising dark, massive, their bodies covered with thick scales that shimmered like stone. Their eyes glowed faintly, cruel and red, filled with hunger. These were not simple beasts. They were predators made for this world, rulers of the night. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She stumbled back, her chains dragging furrows into the sand. The monsters sniffed the air, their massive jaws opening to release low, rumbling roars. The sound shook her bones. She closed her eyes, her breath quickening, and for a moment she thought she would fall apart completely. But then she heard something else. The human's voice. It was not loud. It was not clear, but it carried across the desert like a calm wave. He did not shout. He did not scream. He simply spoke, as if he was not afraid of anything. The girl could not understand the words, but the sound gave her strength. Her glowing eyes opened again, and she clung to that voice as if it was a rope pulling her back from the edge. The monsters shifted their attention. Their heads lifted, their eyes narrowing toward the human. They smelled something new, something different. For the first time, their growls held confusion. This was no weak prey. This was something else. The human walked with a steady rhythm, his boots sinking deep into the sand. His hand rested on the weapon strapped to his back, but he did not draw it yet. His other hand lifted slightly, palm open, as if to show the girl that he meant no harm. The girl froze. Her chains rattled in the wind. Her eyes locked on his, even from a distance. In those eyes, she saw no cruelty, no coldness like her own people had shown her. There was something else, something she had not seen in anyone before. The ground shook again. The monsters grew impatient. One of them roared, a deep, bone-crushing sound, and leapt forward across the dune. Sand exploded beneath its claws as it charged. The girl cried out, covering her ears. The human moved. In one motion, his weapon flashed free, cutting through the starlight. A blade, broad and deadly, glimmered in his hand. His body shifted low, his steps quick and sharp. He was fast, faster than she thought possible. The desert air cracked with the sound of steel meeting flesh. The monster screamed. Its roar echoed into the night as it fell into the sand, thrashing. Blood, dark and thick, spilled across the ground. The others hissed, their red eyes burning brighter. The girl's mouth fell open. She had never seen anything like this. A single human, standing against the desert's rulers, without fear, without hesitation. He stood tall, his blade dripping under the starlight. The monsters did not back away. They circled him, their massive bodies weaving in and out of the dunes. Their growls grew louder, their hunger mixing with rage. The girl stepped back again, her chains clinking, her breath shaking. She did not know what would happen. She only knew she could not look away. The human did not move toward her. He kept himself between her and the monsters, as if shielding her without a word. His eyes flicked across the shadows, his blade ready. The night stretched long, and every heartbeat felt like thunder. The girl's legs shook, her throat dry, her hands pressed tightly to her chest. She did not know who he was. She did not know why he was here. But in that moment, one truth burned inside her heart. She was not abandoned anymore. The monsters roared again, louder than before, and the fight was not over. The desert had chosen its battlefield. The night had chosen its players, and the girl knew, deep in her heart, that everything was about to change. The night air was sharp, filled with the smell of dust and blood. The little alien girl stood frozen in place, her chains heavy against her wrists, her eyes glowing wide as the human fought before her. The sand shifted under his boots as he moved, calm yet powerful, as if every step carried a purpose. His blade shone faintly in the starlight, still wet from the strike that had cut down the first monster. The other creatures circled, their growls rolling like thunder between the dunes. Their red eyes glared at the stranger who dared to stand against them. These beasts were not used to resistance. Everything else that walked this desert ran, screamed, or died. But this human did not flinch. He watched them, waiting for their next move. The girl's breath came fast, her chest rising and falling. Her small hands clutched the chains, trying to make herself smaller, quieter, as though the monsters might forget she was there. But deep inside, she knew that they would never forget. She was their prey. She was the reason they had come. One of the monsters lunged forward. Its body was thick with armor-like scales, its claws sharp enough to tear stone. The sand exploded beneath its weight as it came at the human with terrifying speed. The girl gasped, her glowing eyes filled with terror. But the man did not back away. He moved into the attack. The blade flashed. The sound of steel and bone struck the air. The monster's roar broke into a scream as the weapon cut across its side. It stumbled, blood spilling across the sand. The human turned quickly, his eyes already searching for the next threat. The girl's heart pounded. She had never seen such strength. She had never seen anyone fight like this. Her people would never have risked themselves for her. They had thrown her away, left her in chains, left her for these monsters to eat. But this man, this stranger, was standing between her and death. The creatures did not give up. They hissed and snarled, spreading out, trying to trap him. They were smart, working together, their massive bodies weaving in and out of the dunes like shadows. The human shifted his stance, one hand tightening around his blade, the other raised slightly as though to keep the girl calm. For a moment, the desert went quiet again. Only the wind whispered through the dunes, carrying sand across the ground. The girl shivered. The silence was worse than the noise. It meant the attack was coming. Her eyes darted to the horizon, hoping, praying for some way to escape. But there was nothing. No ship, no shelter. Only the ruins of broken stone far away, too far to reach before the monsters closed in. She pressed her lips together, fighting back tears. She did not want to die. Not like this. Not after seeing him. The first monster leapt again, its jaws opening wide. The man ducked low, rolled across the sand, and struck upward. His blade cut deep, slicing through the beast's throat. It collapsed beside him, its body shuddering in the dirt. The girl gasped, her hands pressed tightly to her mouth. Another came from the side. The human spun, his boots slamming into its chest. The creature staggered back, growling, its teeth snapping inches from his arm. He grunted, shoving it away with the weight of his body, and his blade struck again. Sharp and deadly, the girl's glowing eyes followed every move, her body trembling. She felt as if she was standing in a dream. A nightmare world, yes, but one where a single human fought like a storm, unbroken, unafraid. But the fight was far from over. More shadows rose from the dunes. The beasts were gathering, drawn by the noise, by the smell of blood. The girl's legs gave out, and she fell to her knees. Her chains rattled as she tried to crawl backward. The monsters were endless. She knew he could not fight them all. No one could. The human's eyes flicked toward her, just for a second. It was not a look of fear. It was not anger. It was a promise. She did not know how she understood it, but she felt it all the same. He would not let them have her. The sand shook as three of the creatures charged together. Their roars shattered the silence. The girl covered her ears, her heart beating so fast she thought it might break. She waited for the end. The man moved like lightning. His blades swept in wide arcs, sparks flying as steel clashed against thick scales. His voice rang out, a sound sharp and fierce, cutting through the night like thunder. He fought not like prey, but like something greater, something that belonged here even more than the monsters. The girl could hardly breathe. Every strike, every movement, burned into her memory. She was no longer just watching a stranger. She was watching hope take shape in the desert. But the battle was brutal. His arm bled from a cut across his sleeve. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. The monsters pressed harder, their roars shaking the dunes. The girl wanted to scream, to help, to do anything, but she was too weak, too small, too chained. And still he fought. The desert glowed under the stars. The monsters circled. The human stood tall, blade ready, his shadow stretched across the sand. The girl's eyes locked on him, and for the first time since she had been abandoned, she felt something burning inside her chest. It was not fear. It was not despair. It was faith. The desert was quiet again, but the silence was not victory. The bodies of two dead beasts lay broken in the sand, their dark blood soaking into the ground. The smell sharp and heavy in the night air. The human stood over them, chest rising and falling with slow, heavy breaths. His blade dripped in the starlight, and his shadow stretched long across the dunes. The little alien girl watched him, her glowing eyes wide, her chains trembling in her hands. She could not believe he was still standing. Anyone else would have fallen already. The monsters were stronger, faster, bred only for killing. Yet this human fought them as if he had been born to do it. But more shadows moved in the distance. The desert was not finished. The creatures were never finished. The girl's body shook. She wanted to crawl away, but her chains dragged her down, pulling her back into the sand. Her knees gave out. She whispered to herself, her voice weak and broken, "They will kill us. They will kill us both." The human turned his head toward her. His eyes met hers, steady and calm, even in the middle of death. He walked closer, kneeling before her. The girl flinched as he reached out, but his hand did not strike. Instead, his fingers touched the chains around her wrists. With a swift pull, he snapped them apart. The sound of metal breaking echoed in the desert. The girl gasped. For the first time in her life, her hands were free. She looked down at the broken pieces lying in the sand, hardly able to believe it. The chains had been with her for so long that she had almost forgotten what freedom felt like. Tears filled her glowing eyes. The human spoke, his voice low but strong. She could not understand the words, yet she felt their meaning. He was telling her to stand. He was telling her not to give up. But how could she stand? She was small, weak, broken. She could not fight. She could not save herself. And yet, when his hand reached out again, open and waiting, she felt something inside her chest move. Slowly, carefully, she placed her hand in his. His grip was strong, warm, alive. In that touch, something changed. She was no longer alone. The monsters roared from the dunes, their red eyes glowing brighter in the dark. The ground shook as they moved closer, their claws scraping against the sand. The human stood again, pulling the girl gently behind him. His blade rose once more, ready for the next wave. He had made his choice. He would fight for her. The girl's heart beat fast as she clung to the back of his armor. The growls grew louder, and the shadows stretched around them. She wanted to run, but she could not leave him. He was the only thing standing between her and death. She pressed her small hands against her chest and prayed for him to win. The first beast came charging, its roar tearing the night apart. The human met it head-on, steel flashing in a deadly arc. The blade cut deep, and the creature collapsed with a scream. Another leapt from the side, jaws wide. The human spun, kicking the sand into its eyes, and drove his weapon through its chest. Blood splattered across the ground, black under the stars. The girl trembled, watching in awe. Every move he made was sharp, controlled, full of strength. But she also saw his exhaustion. His breaths were heavy, his steps slower than before. The monsters were many, and he was only one. Her eyes darted to the ruins in the distance, broken walls rising like dark teeth against the horizon. Shelter, a place to hide. She pulled at his arm, trying to make him look. There, she whispered, her voice small but urgent. He followed her gaze. The ruins stood waiting, a chance for escape. He gave a short nod, then pushed another beast back with a heavy strike. Grabbing her hand again, he pulled her forward. They ran. The sand slipped under her feet, and her breath burned in her throat. But she did not let go of him. The monsters roared behind them, furious at their prey trying to escape. Their heavy steps shook the desert, closing in fast. The human turned suddenly, swinging his blade to keep them back. His eyes narrowed, his jaw set. He was not running away, he was fighting while moving, step by step, refusing to let them touch her. The girl stumbled, but he caught her, lifting her onto his arm as if she weighed nothing. She buried her face against his chest, her glowing eyes wet with tears. The ruins grew closer. The broken stones rose above the dunes, casting sharp shadows in the moonlight. The human's boots struck the ground harder now, his breath harsh, his grip never loosening around her. The monsters howled, their rage shaking the air. At last, they reached the edge of the ruins. The human leapt over a fallen pillar, landing inside the cracked walls. He set the girl down gently, his hand still on her shoulder, steadying her. The monsters stopped at the edge of the ruins, their eyes glowing through the dark. They circled, growling low, but did not cross. The girl blinked, confused. Why did they hesitate? Why did they not follow? The human lowered his blade, his shoulders rising and falling with exhaustion. He looked at her, then at the ruins, as if he knew something she did not. The night grew still again. The girl's glowing eyes searched his face, her lips trembling. He had chosen to save her, to fight for her, to carry her when she could no longer stand. Her people had thrown her away, but this stranger, this human, had given her back her life. And in that silence, for the first time since she had been abandoned, she began to believe that she might not die here. The ruins stood tall and broken, their jagged stones rising like the bones of a giant long dead. The air inside was colder, heavy with the scent of dust and age. The human guided the girl deeper into the shadows, his hand steady on her shoulder, his eyes never leaving the monsters that prowled outside the walls. Their growls echoed through the night, sharp and angry, but for now they did not enter. The girl leaned against a fallen block, her chest rising and falling quickly. Her glowing eyes searched the dark space, trembling as she whispered, "Why? Why do they stop?" Her voice was weak, barely more than a breath. The human did not answer. His gaze stayed sharp, watching the shifting shadows beyond the crumbled archways. Perhaps the ruins were sacred, or cursed, or simply feared by the beasts. But he knew one thing: they would not stop forever. The silence broke with a roar. One of the creatures lunged through a gap in the walls, claws tearing against the stone. Dust rained down as its massive body forced its way in. The girl screamed, pressing herself back against the wall. The human stepped forward without hesitation, blade rising in a quick flash. Steel met flesh. Blood splattered across the broken stones as the beast collapsed, twitching. But more were coming. Their eyes glowed red in the gaps between the walls, their bodies pushing closer. The ruins would not hold them out for long. The girl covered her ears as the growls grew louder, surrounding them from all sides. She looked at the human, her lips trembling. He was only one man. He could not fight them all. He turned to her, kneeling for a moment. His voice was calm, though she did not understand the words. Still, the meaning reached her. "Stay low, stay hidden. Do not give up." She nodded, tears streaking her pale cheeks, her silver hair falling across her face. Then the walls shook. A monster crashed through, breaking stone as if it were glass. The human met it with a roar of his own, striking hard. The sound of steel rang sharp in the ruins. The beast swung its claw, slamming against his arm, but he stood his ground. He struck again, his blade cutting deep, until the creature fell with a thud that shook the ground. The girl gasped, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break. She wanted to close her eyes to block out the sight of death, but she couldn't. Her glowing eyes stayed on him, watching every strike, every step. He fought like a storm, moving through the shadows with deadly force, but the monsters were endless. 2 more burst through the walls, their roars shaking the night. The human spun, his blade cutting wide, sparks flying as steel scraped against scale. One beast howled in pain, the other lunged for his back. The girl cried out, "Behind you!" Her voice cracked, but he heard. He rolled aside, just as the jaws snapped where he had stood. The fight was chaos. Sand and dust filled the air, stones crumbled under the weight of the beasts. The human's blade never stopped moving, striking, blocking, cutting through the night. His breath came harsh, sweat running down his face, but his eyes burned with fire. He was not fighting for himself. He was fighting for her. The girl pressed her hands to her chest, her small body shaking. She could feel the walls of the ruins vibrating with every roar, every strike. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. She wanted to scream, but her throat was dry. All she could do was watch and pray. The human stumbled as one of the creatures slammed him against a wall. His blade slipped from his hand, clattering against the stone. The girl gasped, her glowing eyes wide with terror. The beast loomed over him, jaws opening wide. For a moment, she thought it was the end, but he did not give up. His hand reached for a broken spear lying on the ground, its point cracked but still sharp. With a fierce cry, he drove it upward into the beast's throat. The monster screamed, thrashing, before collapsing in a heap. The human fell to his knees, gasping for breath, his chest rising and falling like a drum. The girl crawled forward, her chains dragging in the dirt. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Please get up." Her glowing eyes filled with tears as she reached out. He lifted his head slowly, meeting her gaze. And then he rose again. The monsters hesitated. They had lost many already. Their growls turned low, uncertain. The human lifted his blade once more, standing tall despite the blood that ran down his arm. His shadow stretched long across the ruins, larger than life, unbroken. The girl felt something stir in her chest. For the first time, she did not feel only fear. She felt strength, his strength flowing into her. She wiped her tears and whispered, "You are not like them. You will not leave me." The night dragged on. The beasts circled, roaring and snapping, but none dared to step forward again. The human stood ready, his eyes never leaving theirs. The girl stayed close behind him, her glowing eyes fixed on the man who had chosen to fight for her. And in that broken place, surrounded by death and danger, she realized the truth. He was her shield. He was her hope. And as long as he stood, she would not be taken. The ruins were quiet at last. Dust floated in the air like mist, glowing faintly in the silver light of the stars above. The monsters had pulled back, their red eyes still burning from the shadows. But they no longer pressed forward. They paced outside the broken walls, waiting, growling low, but unwilling to step closer. The human lowered his blade, though he did not release it. His chest heaved, his breaths harsh, sweat dripping down his face. Blood marked his arm, his side, but still he stood tall, ready if they tried again. The little alien girl stayed close to him, her glowing eyes wide, her lips trembling. She could hardly believe what she had seen. She had expected him to fall, like everyone else did in the desert. But he had not fallen. He had stood, he had fought, and he had broken her chains. She stared at him as if he were not real, as if he might vanish at any moment. The human turned to her, his gaze softening for just a moment. He gestured toward the inner part of the ruins, deeper into the stone corridors where the shadows ran thick and the air was cooler. She hesitated, then followed. Her bare feet padded softly against the ground, her chains dragging lightly. Though now broken and useless, they walked into the heart of the ruins. The walls here were tall, carved with strange markings long forgotten. Broken pillars leaned against each other, and pieces of the ceiling lay scattered across the floor. The girl's glowing eyes lit the path as she walked beside him, her small figure trembling, but no longer collapsing. The human finally sat against a large stone, his blade resting across his knees. His breathing slowed, though the pain in his arm was clear. The girl stood before him, uncertain. She opened her mouth, her voice quiet, broken. Why did you help me?" He looked at her for a long moment. His eyes said many things she could not understand. He spoke, his voice low and steady, but the words were strange to her ears. Yet she felt them all the same. He had seen her suffering, and he could not walk away. Her lips trembled. She lowered herself to the ground, sitting across from him, her knees pulled close to her chest. For a long time she was silent, only the sound of the wind moving through the cracks in the walls filling the air. Then at last, she spoke again. "They left me here," she whispered. "My people." Her glowing eyes dimmed with sadness. She touched her wrists where the broken chains still left red marks. "They said I was not strong enough. They said I was a burden. So they tied me and brought me to the desert, left me for the beasts." Her voice cracked, and she turned her face away, her silver hair falling over her cheeks. "I begged them," I cried, "but they did not care. No one cared. I was meant to die here." The human listened in silence. His face was calm, though his eyes grew darker, harder, as if her pain became his anger. He looked down at the broken chains at her feet, then back at her. Slowly, he shook his head, a silent rejection of the cruelty she had endured. The girl wiped her tears with her small hands. She looked at him again, her voice trembling. "But you are not like them. You did not leave me. You fought for me. Why?" He leaned forward, his gaze steady. His voice came low, deep, carrying weight though she understood few of his words. But she felt them in her heart, clearer than any language. He fought because no one else would. He fought because it was the right thing. Her glowing eyes widened, tears falling again. But this time not only from pain. She pressed her small hands against her chest, where her heart beat fast. For the first time since she had been abandoned, she felt more than fear. She felt hope. The human shifted, standing again despite his wounds. He looked toward the horizon through the broken walls. The monsters still waited outside, their eyes like burning coals in the night. But he did not falter. He turned back to her, extending his hand. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his once more. His grip was strong, steady, unbreakable. He pulled her gently to her feet, guiding her deeper into the ruins. Together they moved through the dark halls, their steps echoing softly. The girl's voice came again, soft as the wind. "Will you leave me too?" The human stopped. He turned to her, his face serious. He knelt so his eyes met hers, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. His gaze held no doubt, no hesitation. He shook his head, her lips parted, her glowing eyes filling with light. She nodded, clutching his hand tightly. Outside, the monsters growled again, anger rolling across the desert. But within the ruins, the girl no longer felt the same crushing fear. The human had made his choice. He would not abandon her. The ruins stretched on, filled with secrets and shadows. But for the first time she believed they might survive. Her people had left her to die, but the stranger had given her something greater than survival. He had given her trust. He had given her a reason to keep walking. And as they moved deeper into the stone corridors, the girl whispered to herself, her voice faint but filled with new strength, "I am not alone anymore." The night stretched long, but at last, the first colors of dawn touched the desert sky. Faint streaks of orange and gold spread across the horizon, chasing away the cold darkness. The ruins glowed softly under the rising sun, their broken stones painted in light. The girl sat near one of the crumbled walls, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her glowing eyes followed the sunrise, wide with wonder. For so many days, she had thought she would never live to see another dawn. Yet here it was warm, alive, full of promise. She turned her head toward the human, who stood nearby, his figure tall and steady against the morning light. He had not rested. His blade was still in his hand, though his grip was loose now, his body heavy with exhaustion. Cuts marked his skin, his clothes torn, blood dried across his side. Yet his eyes remained sharp, always watching, always ready. Even when the monsters had pulled back into the dunes, he had not lowered his guard. The girl rose slowly, her bare feet brushing against the sand. She walked toward him, her silver hair glowing in the light of the morning sun. For a moment, she only stood beside him in silence, looking out at the endless desert. The monsters were gone, their growls faded into the distance. Perhaps they would return, perhaps they would not. But for now, the world was quiet. She spoke softly. her voice carrying the weight of everything she had endured. "I thought I would die here." Her eyes shimmered with tears, though her lips trembled in a small smile. "But you saved me." The human turned to her. He said nothing, but his gaze was enough. Strong, steady, filled with something she had never seen before. Not pity, not coldness, but care. He reached out, brushing the broken chains still hanging loosely around her wrists. Then, with a sharp pull, he cast them aside. They fell into the sand, forgotten. The girl's breath caught. She stared at the place where the chains had been, her small hands trembling. She lifted them to the sky, free for the first time, and let out a quiet laugh that turned into a sob. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they were no longer only from fear. The human placed his hand gently on her shoulder. He spoke in his strange voice, the words unclear but the meaning clear enough. She was no longer bound. She was no longer alone. Her glowing eyes met his, and she whispered, "I will not forget." The ruins stood silent around them as they prepared to leave. The human lifted his pack, adjusted his weapon, and then extended his hand toward her. She looked at it, hesitated for only a moment, then placed her small hand in his. His grip closed gently, and together they stepped into the rising light. The desert stretched endlessly before them, golden under the morning sun. It looked as dangerous as ever, but now the girl did not see it the same way. She no longer saw only death in the dunes. She saw the strength of the man beside her. She saw a path forward dot as they walked. Her voice broke the silence once more. "My people, they said I was nothing. They said I was weak." She turned her glowing eyes up at him. "But you saw me. You fought for me. Why?" He looked down at her, his step steady, his face calm. His answer was simple, carried in the quiet of his eyes. Because she mattered. Because no life deserved to be thrown away. Because he was human. The girl's heart swelled, her chest tight with feelings she could not name. She pressed her hand against her heart, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Then, I will walk with you, wherever you go." The sun rose higher, warming the sands. The ruins faded behind them, the monsters still watching from far away but not daring to follow. The desert was vast, endless, filled with dangers still to come. But in that moment, the girl felt something stronger than fear. She felt trust. She felt courage. Each step echoed softly across the dunes. The girl stumbled once, her small legs weak, but the human caught her hand and steadied her without a word. She looked up at him, her glowing eyes filled with determination. She was not just surviving anymore. She was living. The desert wind carried their shadows forward, stretched long across the sand. One small, fragile figure beside one tall, scarred warrior. Two lives bound together by chance, by choice, by something greater than either of them. The girl whispered again, her voice carried by the wind. "They left me to die, but you gave me life." The human said nothing. He only tightened his grip on her hand as they walked into the horizon. And so, in the cruelest world, where even hope was meant to die, humanity had done what no one else would do. He had stood. He had fought. He had saved. The desert no longer felt endless. With every step, with every breath, the girl believed more strongly that the universe had changed for her. She had been abandoned, forgotten, broken. But now she carried something stronger than chains, stronger than fear. She carried the strength of a human who refused to let her fall. And as the sun climbed high above the world, their journey began not one of death, but of life, of survival, of hope.